Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the NLC. My name is Hiprain. I'm joined by Gulborg, Excoundrel, and Orcs here on the desk. Obviously, sponsored to you, brought to you by LG Canton, Corsair, Telia, and MasterCard. We actually, as we are on Wednesday, every week we are doing a weekly raffle here at the NLC. If you head over to our social media channels at NLC LOL, you can actually vote for your favorite play of the day, and you can be in for a chance to win some cool prizes. That RP is going steadily up. There's quite a lot of RP up for grabs. So all the new, Spirit Blossom skin line? Am I right in that? Yeah, Spirit Blossom. All the new Spirit Blossom skins. There's quite a lot of skins to get your hands on. They all look really nice. So
now
might be a way to get your hands onto that.
You too can get the new Yasuo skin and go 0-10 in your ranked games.
That sounds like a man who's really been feeling the hurt there. No? Not at all?
A little bit. Here and then.
So yesterday we had some pretty fun games. Gulborg, what games really stood out to you? What was your favorite game from yesterday?
I mean, there's not really a lot of games that stood out, really. I think that just in general, I was happy to see that we finally saw a glimpse of hope for XL. Didn't really seem like the normal scrim strategy they went for. It was rather them actually coming in and showing what a good team can look like, and fairly so taking the first place in that group right now.
And on the complete opposite side, we saw Munster, and you can see on screens with this level 1 invade that backfired massively, just completely collapsing, imploding on themselves. And obviously the argument can be made, they're against Fnatic, who are top of their group, undefeated. But still, I think expectations still at this point, week 6 out of 7 not being met for Munster, and it's starting to get a little bit concerning because they could still be knocked away from that playoff spot. So need to keep fighting.
Yeah, Munster have got a lot of work to do, but on the bright side, something that did go well was XL returned to form. They guaranteed themselves a playoff spot in Group A here. They beat out Nordavind, as you were seeing some replays from a moment ago. It was a very convincing performance from a team where we have raised questions about their consistency, maybe not to the level that we were raised with Monster Rugby Gaming, but the XL just before that game lost to Riddle, and they were definitely throwing their first seed spot or even a playoff spot potentially into contention in that Group A side of things. So it's nice to see XL find the return to form and getting a really dominant win over Nordavind, which is essentially securing themselves that top spot in the Group A.
Yeah, and just not right now in the future too, right? Because they're finally over the second place, which was Nordavind. They're 2-0 head-to-head against them, so they should be quite comfortable at the first place seeding in Group A if everything goes their way from now on.
Yeah, I think the only concern is Riddle, because although Riddle are down on them in terms of points, they do have the advantage in head-to-head. They still actually haven't played as many games as XL right now, so if Riddle do win their game today, they definitely have an opportunity to catch them. I think for Nordavind, it's a little bit trickier, just because if XL win another game, Nordavind can't catch them up due to that head-to-head, but Riddle have a real chance and an opportunity.
Well, there's only 3 days left of regular play here in the league. So let's have a little look at our standings and see how everything is starting to fall. We still have a lot up in contention, but over in Group A, XL are at the top 6-2. Then it's Nordavind, Riddle, Ents, Godsent, and at the bottom it is Team Singularity. Let's take a flip side over to look at Group B. We have a lot more games coming from this group today, so have a better idea of where everything is sitting. Fnatic Rising still undefeated, 7-0. Then it is Tricked, 5-2. Then Munster in third, Dusty, Barrage, and at the bottom it is M&M.
And something that's interesting here is Tricked are actually locked into playoffs. So I went and worked this out today. Obviously, XL and Fnatic are locked into playoffs. We've talked about that. But basically, looking at Tricked, there is one situation in which Barrage can tie their score, and it would be a 4-way tie for second, in which Tricked could potentially be in that spot, not in playoffs. But due to the rulings on head-to-heads, Tricked would actually win out in that regard over the other teams they were facing against, and so they would still remain in playoffs. So essentially, Tricked are guaranteed playoffs at this point, which joins Fnatic Rising and BTXL. So those are our 3 that you'll definitely see in that stage of the competition.
Let's have a little bit of a talk about the Fnatic game yesterday versus Munster, because we all really bigged it up and we thought it was going to be this explosive, exciting game to watch. And it really, it was explosive, it was exciting, but it wasn't what we wanted from Munster. It was somewhat disappointing, I think is the best way to word it. Excoundrel, what was going wrong for Munster there?
So Monster drafted something that essentially boxed them into a very single-minded game plan. They took the Draven into the Callista. It is designed to out-duel her in the early game. Very few AD carries can do that. They played the Olaf, and essentially their entire game plan was run it down through bot, but in a good way. You know, like essentially try and dominate that bot lane and try and take the first tower, put Callista under pressure, and limit some of Fnatic's win conditions. The issue was they just threw the game out the window from the very get-go.
And what actually frustrated me was, although bot lane, you want to be putting pressure down there, especially before the Twisted Fate has 6, it's not like you have to crush bot lane. You had an Azir mid lane, you had a Gangplank top, you had scaling options available to you. All you had to do was not run it down like they did there. And they do this level 1 invade, where they get caught out, the enemy team's able to counter them, and they end up just literally throwing away the entire game before it's even started. And it's honestly frustrating. I mean, I like it when we have close games where it's action-packed and it feels like both teams are giving it their all. Seeing Munster just flop again is just, it's tiring, honestly, because we know the players are more capable. We know they can do better than this, and yet we still get these performances. And I have no doubt that the team and the organization are sick of these performances by now. So we don't have many games left. I'm hoping they just step up and stop, you know, rolling over and dying.
Yeah, and honestly, they just can't be experimental anymore. They need to stop this playstyle we've been seeing from them. They thought it would work out going all out in the early game, always putting all your eggs in the basket for that early game basket, but in the end, it's not working. Just try something different. Don't do whatever you're doing. Stop flipping the early game every time because it's not working out.
Yeah, they need to take a leaf from XL's book. They need to take a leaf from the, okay, experimenting time is over. Let's just go back to something that's easy to execute. We can rely on our superior individual skill and then come together as a team and make it work. That is what XL did, and I think Monster need to kind of follow suit.
Yeah, XL obviously are the front runners over on Group A. I believe after yesterday, they did lock themselves. Yes, they have locked themselves over into their run at playoffs. They're not locked into first, if I'm right. I think there's still a few more scenarios where they can get knocked down. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, so essentially Riddle still have an extra game to play because XL played 8, Riddle played 7. Riddle have 2-0 in the head-to-head against XL, so a very easy opportunity for them to challenge a spot. And although Nordavind are losing the head-to-head 2-0, they're only a point down. So next game, if XL win against Singularity next week, then we will see Nordavind unable to get first place, but Riddle can still challenge for a considerable time because of the head-to-head matchup. So definitely not safe right now for XL, but they are going to be in the playoffs regardless.
Yeah, and finally, as you say here, they are finally in the playoffs regardless. I think it also came down to, as we spoke about, they tried to go for some of these easy-to-execute compositions instead. Not just specifically a roster that was designed to play through Deadly, but also having hat-tricks on a nice control mage, able to get his input on the game too. And then the final nail in the coffin here is actually getting Taxa and Sendo on something that is really easy to execute and hard to fail on, because they have been some question marks, at least for me, in this XL run. But yesterday, they actually look phenomenal.
But there's still so much more up in the air for Group A. Nordavind, Riddle, Ents, Godsent all have a shot at playoffs. Orcs, I believe you've done a bit of maths here, so is this the one you did loads of maths on? Yeah, it is. So talk to me through like the scenarios and how each team can kind of make it into the playoffs for Group A.
I mean, actually, I was doing more maths for B, seeing if Trick could get through. For A, I mean, all the teams are so closely clustered together in points. There is real opportunities for a lot of ground to be gained. Obviously, right now, Godsent is on the lower end, but they have another game to play, which will be that one against Riddle. And after that game, so after the first game of today, we will see every team in the group at 8 games apiece with only 2 left. And that's when we can get a good idea of where they're going to go, who's going to be able to catch up with who. If Godsent win this one, we'll have a 3-way tie between Riddle, Ents, and Godsent, and that's going to make really interesting, but things really interesting. But head-to-head is the important thing. For our tiebreakers, if 2 teams are tied, their head-to-head matchup comes down. If multiple teams are tied, then it's an aggregate head-to-head, so the combined head-to-head. And if yours is, significantly higher, above 50% than everyone else's, then you get that higher seeded spot. So it's really important beating out the teams at your level, which is why this first match, Riddle against Godsent, is so vital.
It kind of feels like every game is incredibly vital now. Even for the bottom teams, they're still fighting for that kind of relegation spot. We'll get onto that in a little bit. Group B, there's still 3 teams who are kind of in this rat race, as Scoundrel quite aptly described it yesterday. Group B, you got Munster, Dusty, Barrage. There's so much still up in the air for all these teams, and it's making for some really kind of nail-biting League of Legends for the last 3 days of actual regular season we've got left.
Yeah, Orcs mentioned Tricked are locked in for top 4 here. Even though their scoreline doesn't get it through guaranteed, it's basically based on head-to-head, so there's no way that Tricked can really drop out of the top 4. So really, you're looking at a 3-horse race between Munster, Dusty, and Barrage. Barrage are not completely out of it, Dusty are not completely out of it, and Munster is still in a very comfortable but not secure position for those playoff races. The only people, or the only team that I don't think can feasibly make, or at least can't do it on their own volition, are M&M, but they still aren't out of 100, they still can get out of relegations essentially. So there's a lot to play for in Group B, and it's going to make some of the games coming up today for people like Dusty and Barrage that much more important.
Yeah, so just quickly, M&M can't get playoffs because of their head-to-head against Dusty is losing, and they're the only team they can catch who are obviously fourth. So M&M definitely aren't going to playoffs, but as you said, they can make it out of relegations. They can catch up with Barrage, and that's going to be the important thing for them, closing that gap, ensuring that you're not going out of relegations and fighting for your spot in the league. But it will be, by all means, a hard fight, and it's also relying on Barrage's results, which aren't going to completely be dictated by M&M, even though they do have one match against them.
Goldberg didn't meant to say that. I thought you baited me, dude. You baited me on that one. So let's talk a little bit about the relegations as well, because Singularity, they're out. They have they're done, unfortunately, for them. M&M, like you said, still fighting to stay kind of in the race for the moment. Obviously, can't make it into the playoffs, but obviously they still have the ability to avoid relegations. And at this point, it's kind of a miracle for a 0-7 team, considering how tight everything else is, they still can actually survive. That's the key thing for me here.
Yeah, well, I think Orcs mentioned it earlier. He went into it in a little bit of detail, but honestly, M&M have got Fnatic to thank for that. The fact that Fnatic have done so well in the group has meant that so many other teams in that group have actually got lower scores than comparatively with Group A, where XL have actually lost a couple of games to some of the mid-table teams. Because Fnatic have stomped so hard, it basically means that the gap between M&M and the very bottom rung is actually a little bit less than it is over on the other side of the coin. So believe it or not, we are saying M&M, you still have a chance.
It kind of baffles me that they still have a chance. And, you know, maybe with this new form of their roster, this will be the strongest M&M we've seen here in the NLC. We haven't got that game coming up quite yet, but we'll obviously get a little bit more into that before that game starts. But for now, guys, we are going to cut to a quick break. And when we're back, we're getting ready to go into our first game of the day. It's going to be Riddle versus Godsent. See you in a second.
education, other kinds of wealth. We found this animation, luck was a conversation, pictures on a shelf. People say we are just what we do. It's just a stage. So we go on, and the lights are so strong. Just have to make this sound. We've broken ground, it's a countdown. We go on. Go on. Life is an invitation, a soapbox imagination. Use it while you can. A handheld illumination, LCD appellation. Show up is the plan. Oh, they say we are just what we do, and it's all a stage. So we go on, and the lights are so strong. Just have to make this sound. We've broken ground, it's a countdown. We go on.
Waking up, the sun is rising. We can go anywhere, do anything. Put your hand in my hand, let's explore. Travel places no one's been before. Leave your fears and hear you calling.
Just trying to pump the damage out, and actually Eminem's health bars are being absolutely obliterated. Yamchen's going to get clipped, and all of the CC's onto him. Down he goes. Members here. Legion's still alive. They flash forward. Down goes the mid. Chelm's the only one left standing as he's dealing with PlayStation and Wazor. A triple kill for Chelm. He's going to take out Wazor. Make it a quadra kill. As they are getting zoned away, this might be the miracle I was asking for. Energy finds the kill. The Inferno King up clutch. Eminem are not out of it. And down goes Energy. Jack Spectre still firing away. You can't kill the Aphelios. Eminem are sent packing as Dusty walk away with the fight. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the NLC. Before we get diving into our first game, let's actually have a look at what we've got coming up today on the league. We've got 4 great games, most of them coming out from Group B, but we are starting up with a Group A game between Riddle and Godsent. Second up will be Eminem versus Tricked. Third of all, it will be Fnatic Rising versus Dusty, and we're rounding the day out with Munster Rugby versus Barrage. Someone should say to me, what game are you excited for?
I mean, I think that I'm just going to go straight off for that Riddle versus Godsent in the beginning. There's a lot of specific talent from a specific country in that game that I'm quite intrigued about. but I can't necessarily tell which one it is. It's just a great game. I'm really looking forward to in general, and I think it's also Riddle's chance to prove themselves, because last time they came from the exact same position. They had just beaten BTXL. Now they went on to Godsent. They were heavy favorites, and Godsent just came in with the upset. So now they're back to play for their pride.
I think for me, I'm looking at the last game of the day, Munster against Barrage. Start of the split, I call this a stomp for Munster, but at this point, I actually think Barrage have a decent shot at this. Last time they played up against each other, Barrage had a good start, had good scaling elements, and it was only really Sebex's 1v9 Annie play that brought them back into it. If Munster again try to commit hard to an early game, I could see it flopping. I could see Barrage actually coming out ahead of this one, especially if they have some good scaling picks in the mid lane from Jadran. So I think that one could be our closest game of the day, although I think Riddle Godsent might challenge for that.
That game actually is quite exciting to me. Munster, after that pretty disappointing game yesterday versus Fnatic, I'd love to see, how they bounce back. And obviously Barrage, while their scoreline makes them look like a bit of an easy win, I think Barrage have also been a little bit sleeper strong, and maybe there's always been that little moment where they've been able to pull it back. But let's have a little look at the predictions and see what everyone's voting for. Oh, we went the same. Everybody went the same thing
guys.
here. There's no controversy. Where's
quite
Goolborg's wild pick?
self-explanatory. I mean, Riddle has just come in, like, take the first game, right? Riddle came off just beating BTXL. Godsent came from beating Singularity. There's not much to take away from that one. Trick's been looking great. Fnatic's been looking great. It's just, it's quite easy to choose here, I think.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Let's hone in. Let's hone in on our first game then, the Riddle versus Godsent game. Goolborg, you're very, very excited about this. What are we watching in this game? Where's our attention going to be?
Well, I definitely think that from Riddle, it could be at their solo lanes. We have seen that they've been very strong and adamant of playing through the pressure there. But I also think that what I'm looking to see from Riddle is them trying to actually play with a bit of a weaker bot side. We have seen that they're a team that sometimes they just want to play through every lane in general, and it just falters. So I'm looking for them to put pressure on their solo lanes and maybe relieve some of that pressure from Ray and Vendenblow. Just let them play that easy weak side instead.
I'm actually quite excited for this game because Riddle, before they played XL last week, it was off stream, obviously. Essentially, we're making a lot of hype on social media about being a reformed team, a Riddle reborn, all this kind of stuff that you saw. And they came out, and not only did they talk the talk, they walked the walk. They straight up beat XL. Yes, it was off stream, but they did the job. Doxy was one of the big carries there. They played through him on Renekton, and he was a monster. That's the problem. Riddle are like Jekyll and Hyde. Sometimes they look like unbelievably good. They look like a beast. They look like they are living up to the names that they have on their roster. And sometimes they look boosted, like actually straight up. So that's what I want to eliminate from Riddle's gameplay. I want to see them be better. I want to see them be more consistent, and this is their starting point, beating XL, but now you've got to go on and continue to prove that you have what it takes to be in the top end of Group A.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm looking specifically at the solo laners for Riddle. I think that Doxy and Senkux have actually had really pop-up performances. They had, again, against XL, but they've been inconsistent. And I think if they can work on that consistency, I think if Maxi is playing through the top side, we could see a really strong team here, because we've seen that the bot lane for Riddle have shown that they can play a weak side bot lane and just look to scale up. I would prefer them to lean into that heavily. I think you can afford to play a defensive bot lane. I think you can afford to really snowball Doxy, because he has been absolutely monstrous when he has a lead. And Senkux as well, if he has the pressure, can just run away with that mid lane matchup. I think for me, that's the best way Riddle should look to attack this matchup. And I think it's quite different from a lot of the other teams who have been going more bot side focused, and that variety can cause issues for a team who are potentially doing something like, playing the Gangplank top side, expecting to be unchallenged, and then suddenly you have Doxy's Renekton really putting the hurt down onto you.
And speaking of doing something different, well, we got Godsent that from the start of the split initially just came in at this carry top lane performance style. I'm looking for them to just go whatever works for them, right? I want them to be on the attacking front. I don't want them to think, okay, these guys are better than us, because last time they played, I think it was a draft difference. It actually came down to rather than the individual play. So I want them to come together as a unit here and not be afraid to challenge. If you see a weak side bot lane, challenge the bot lane. If you are seeing that you can play for the top side with champion, well, come up there with C-Boy and do what you do best. Play that style of yours.
I think this is going to be a very exciting game, and obviously there's a lot on the line for both of these teams, but we are going to be getting ready to go into Champ Select. But before that, we have a quick break. We'll be back with Champ Select for Riddle versus Godsent. See you in a second.
Waking up, the sun is rising. We can go anywhere, do anything. Put your hand in my hand, let's explore. Travel places no one's been before. Leave your fears and hear you calling. Wherever you go, wherever you are, your beauty's unique. So sweet, our differences make our union so great. Together we perfect harmony, perfect harmony. Together we will be perfect harmony. Let's get lost in a forest of green. Lose ourselves in the blue of the sea. Paint the world any color we choose, or a rainbow with all of the hues. Make the world the way that we dream. Wherever you go, wherever you are, your beauty's unique. Melody so sweet, our differences make our union so great. Together we perfect harmony, perfect harmony. Together we will be perfect harmony. Together we'll be, together we'll be perfect harmony.
I feel like I'm in a dream, 'cause nothing is as it seems. I feel like I'm in a dream, but that's where I wanna be. And I feel free for the first time. And I feel free, free for the first time. For the first time.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and we're getting ready to go into Champ Select for our first game of the day between Riddle and Godsent. The Camille taken away from Champion. Pretty much expected stuff, really, there.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to see the Fiora ban too as a follow-up, just to give that huge respect. I'm really looking into this draft because, as I mentioned in the pre-game, last time it was an extremely rude and cocky draft coming in from Riddle. They were really confident with extremely weird, one-dimensional, everyone needs to do well to actually make this composition work. And now I'm looking to them to actually create a normal, easy-to-execute composition and just do what Riddle do best.
And I think that's where the concern for the Camille comes in, because if you're trying to play, your standard easy to play team fights with a strong backline, split pushes can be problematic. And I think one thing that massively favors Godsent here is that they are on the red side, so they can set themselves up to have a good matchup for Champion or Mikma if they do want that.
Well, for now, the Ashe, the Trundle been taken away. There's the Karthus, pretty much expected realistically. Obviously, he had a lot of priority in the bot lane as of late. Some teams maybe not willing to pick it up as much as others. But do we see this Fiora? That's what I want to see my eyes on. That's what I'm tracking for this first mix and match.
I very much doubt it. To just randomly slam a Fiora would be, I think, very risky. Also, completely boxes you into a certain style of play. Like, Fiora is one of those champions that has one single goal in mind. At least when you play something like Jax, you have the flexibility. Fiora doesn't really have that flexibility. She's just about split push pretty much the entire way through. I'm wondering whether Ezreal gets taken off the board. That's my question, because that is something that Ray plays really well. It's actually going to be, okay, Maxi's Graves makes a lot of sense because obviously Maxi is an incredible jungler. Volibear is still up, gets immediately locked in.
Yeah, the big 3 picks that are left open for me were Volibear, Karma, and the Ezreal as well. So we do see the Volibear picked up, a strong flex for the side of Riddle, but it means that we can now see Godsent answer back. They have their choice of the Karma. They can pair up with the Ezreal if they want, or if they leave the Ezreal over to Riddle, it ensures that they have priority. They can potentially bully out that lane matchup and consistently look to find priority. And we've seen Riddle's bot lane have sometimes like to play the more defensive style. You could see that as an avenue to play through to find an advantage.
I'm looking at one of those safe mid laners too. You still have Orianna, Azir, and Syndra even available. So watch out for that for the third pick on the red side, or if even Mikma feels so confident that he wants that Syndra right now and not give it away, because that is something you need to take into consideration too. There is an individual skill between Mikma and Sankox. I don't think you can ignore that. So you really need to prioritize meta as well as some comfort for Mikma going up against Sankox.
Is the set for now, though, if it's going to get locked in? Obviously, a flexible pick. You can flex out between the jungle, top, bot, mid. Realistically, it's a very flexible pick. And obviously, with that Volibear, also picked off a Riddle, flexible pick here. So expect to see some kind of answer out for this Karma in the bot lane. Looks like their eyes are on that Ezreal, like we said. Don't want to go into the Ezreal Karma. So at least going to get their hands onto the Ezreal. The Fresh was taken away in the ban phase as well. So I'm curious to see what Riddle want to pick up and pair up with this Ezreal bot lane. Looks like they want something with some engage and a bit of tankiness to it in the Nautilus.
Yeah, you want to take a support here because you want something that can potentially threaten the Karma. One of the concerns I would have is if Godsent went, say, Karma or Phelios into your Ezreal, they'd have priority, they'd outscale. It could be really scary. Having the Nautilus means that you have something that can make things happen in the lane, but also if you do leave the lane, you're going to make an impact on the map. So it does put pressure on Godsent to at least try and have something happen in the bot lane rather than just farming up and securing that scaling. I like the Karma and set pairing, honestly. I think it gives a lot of team fighting power between those two because you have the movement speed to enable the set and find those angles. But ultimately, you're now looking at Ezreal, which is a little bit trickier to find. And they do go for that Phelios, so super strong scaling bot lane from Godsent. They're going to have priority in the lane, and it's really up to Wendelbo and this Nautilus to either create fights in the bot lane, create all-ins, or to find skirmishes on the rest of the map.
But that's what I'm worried about right now for Godsent, because you got Karma Phelios, which is in the lane you can easily punish when you have the likes of Nautilus and Volibear, especially for that post-6 dive composition too. So while they might have an advantage with the double range matchup here with an Aphelios and a poke coming in from Karma, I'm going to be worried about as to how they will actually play this weak side, because even though that the teammates of Godsent has said that Hoist is probably the best weak sider in the league, I'm still not very convinced if you go up against the likes of Nautilus and Volibear in bot lane.
Yeah, we might see a situation where they actually have to play through the bot lane to facilitate them and provide. We could also still see this Karma be flexed into one of the other lanes if they want a stronger lane to go for going 2v2 and matching the all-in, at least, of Riddle. Although, to be honest, I feel like the Karma can hold your own as long as you're not getting ganked. It's a significant worry for me. Now, we're seeing safe mid laners banned away from Sankox. I think Azir and Orianna, he's had some formidable performances on, although there was that one whiffy game for the Orianna. And Riddle are looking towards Champion, potentially him being a side lane threat with that last pick counter pick. We could actually see the Fiora ban come out here just to eliminate the threat in that regard, because Doxy likely is going to have to blind pick a top laner here because there is that threat of this set being flexed.
Yeah, but Doxy's one of those top lane players that will happily just go Renekton into most matchups. We've seen him to play the Urgot before. These are champions that I think are quite difficult to find good counter matches up into, unless you're going to play the Kennen, for instance, for Godsent. I'm waiting to see what they are going to go for the mid lane, because they have banned away Azir and Orianna. They're taking away some of that meta, I guess, kind of like safe fallbacks here for the mid lane, and we are going to see please don't lock in Kog'Maw, Mikma. I will be very sad if you lock in Kog'Maw. I think you're going to give yourself way too much late game. It's a Leona, so that is going to be a Karma mid, I think, for Mikma, and it's still going to keep that set flexible.
Could still, though, be a Karma top lane. It has a little bit of flexibility in that regard if they do find a situation they want to lean into. But this is essentially saying, okay, we're not going to get the free lane for Karma and Aphelios. We want to be able to match your skirmishing power. We want to be able to match the all-in. And so they go for the Leona, and it means Pedersen has a bit more agency. I like the adaptation. We've seen a lot of Karma prioritized, not so much of it being flexed, though. And this is going to be our first chance to see it on this patch.
Twisted Fate picked up there for Senkux. Obviously has some global pressure open to them, and now we're going to find out where they're putting this volley bear, if it's going to go in the jungle, if it's going to go in the top lane. And locked in the Gnar for Doxy, so some of it can kind of hold its own in the top lane. You have the option to go in the split push build. You can go down that team fighting road as well. I actually really like this draft for Riddle.
That is such a classic Doxy too, especially because this is what we thought we were going to see as soon as those Gnar buffs came in back like one patch, 2 patches ago. The thing is, Doxy has usually played this Gnar, and is one of those kind of guys that's just going to gain the pressure by his own individual skill, and that is something that's going to suit the playstyle of Maxi so well when you can facilitate your jungler through a Gnar pick in its own right. And as we see, it is going up against a top lane Karma. Since you're both range, it's way easier to play this top lane matchup.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing. If you'd gone something like the Renekton, especially if there was an early pressure coming out from Seaboy, you could really see him having a bad time melee into range. But here on the Gnar, he should just be able to farm up safely. And although he's going to lose in terms of team fighting presence that Karma offers, which is monumental with the shielding, he is going to have the opportunity for those high impact ultimates. And also, he will eventually win the side lane matchup pretty hard. So it sets you up for a 1-3-1 with the Twisted Fate. Whereas I feel like for Godsent, they're going to want to be grouping and playing around the Aphelios more so.
It's a very spicy draft for that, actually. I really like this. I'm excited to see how this is going to go top lane. Like you said, the Karma, wants to bully, but it is versus the Gnar, so they've got that range to work with. I think Doxy versus Champion is definitely my lane to watch going into this game. And even though it is a Karma, and Karma can be a little, well, she neutralizes most lanes she's in when she's in a solo lane at least. I think this is gonna be quite a fun matchup to watch. So we are getting ready to throw down 2 Arcasters. So Medic and Trouble, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hitbrain. I'm really looking forward to the first game of the day. Riddle and Godsent very close in Group A right now. Only 1 win separates them. And as we heard on the analyst desk, Trouble, Godsent did take the win last time, even though Riddle had just beaten BCXL.
Yeah, and it was with a very unorthodox sort of composition. There was a lot of poke back then. This is much more traditional. This is not the Godsent that I'm used to. I'm like, we were talking throughout the Champions League. We're like, well, this should be the split push for Godsent. There's no way, They picked Aphelios for Hoys. They claim him to be the best weak side bot laner, let's say. And then I have a feeling this Karma ain't going down bot lane.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I think the Leona is a really good pick into Nautilus in lane, just because you can Zenith Blade through the Nautilus engage and try and catch out the enemy AD carry. But of course, Ez, you're really safe there as well. So I think the big point and the key point in this game for me is going to be when we see those supports roaming around and where Senkux tries to go first with his destiny. Because if he's going up towards the top lane to try and shut down Champion, Doxy could actually be in a really good spot just to snowball this game away from Godsent.
And the thing is, I think the story here is more of the ADCs, because at the end of the day, I don't necessarily see Riddle split pushing. A lot of teams have tried, many have failed. I do see them grouping up in the end. So I feel like it's the battle of the ADCs here. Is the Ezreal going to be able to poke through first and then carry on? Or is the Aphelios just going to go 200 years on them? And there's a very key thing with the Twisted Fate here. You're playing against the Zoe. It's going to be so hard for you to roam when your wave is constantly pushed underneath your tower. So I want to see how he's going to handle that one.
That's definitely true. We'll see how Senkux is able to deal with Mikma in the mid lane. They said it on the analyst desk. There's a slight skill discrepancy, a slight level discrepancy between the two. Mikma might need a little bit of help to survive Senkux early on. He does have the Cleanse and the Unsealed Spellbook, so has a little bit of safety if he gets caught out with a Sleepy Trouble Bubble. But I'm sure Godsent will be trying to focus on keeping Senkux under wraps. Early on, just line of skirmish from these two teams. It's not Monster Rugby Gaming. They don't need to do something at level 1. They can just play a little bit more passively and just get their first camps pretty easily. And we'll see how the junglers decide to affect the map in the first 3 or 4 minutes of the game.
I honestly don't expect them to do anything crazy. And I can tell that from the drafts, right? They're both a little bit toned down. They're waiting for these very key items so they can start fighting. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of these dragons go uncontested, you know, depending on the reset timers. Whoever gets first in the river, the other team backing off and allowing them to have the dragon so they don't have to force any unnecessary fights before they need to take them. So I feel like it's going to be a slow and calculated game. There's a lot on the line. For Riddle, this is pride. They've beat the first team in the group twice, and Godsent has 1 win over them. So for them, it's pride. Coming back, getting revenge onto Godsent, and Godsent really want to get in that race for playoffs and secure their place. So this is the time and the place to do it.
Yeah, and for Godsent, obviously having a 2-0 over Riddle across the course of the season is great for the head-to-head. You know, when you get to playoffs, some of those positions can be decided by your record against the enemy team. So they'll be looking to get a 2-0 here. Early doors, not too much action as expected. You can see here, both the bot lanes are probably going to have equal pushing power early on. The Aphelios probably doesn't push quite as quickly as the Ezreal, but with the Leona by his side, he should be okay. And they will just catch the wave as it bounces in towards the turret. Now, I want to just talk a little bit about the team fight execution of these compositions, because as you said, like both these teams are reliant on their AD carries later on, but there's a little bit of a difference in how the team fights are going to go. You know, with Riddle, I see much more of a traditional front to back, right? You've got the Volibear in the front line, you've got the Gnar going in, looking to catch people out with the ultimate, and they're these like beef frontline tanks that can hold the door as the rest of your team slowly pushes forward. Whereas with Godsent, you're looking at a pick to start it off and then follow up from there, right? A good Solar Flare, a good Sleepy Trouble Bubble, a good engage from Seaboy,
a good
fed up by Champion perhaps, and perhaps a good flank in the mid lane. Mikma is just going to flash away and we'll be fine.
He'll catch another one in the process.
I mean, exactly, right? He's going to get one off this cannon minion in just a second anyway, so it's going to be fine for him. Senkux trying to block it there. The Paddle Star not quite able to connect with the cannon minion, but I want to go back to that point because Godsent feels very much more like we will burst someone out and then we'll use our utility and our shielding to be able to then take the fight. They don't have those traditional frontline tanks that you'd see in a composition.
See, I like that point here because even though both the teams look to want to do the same thing, right? Scale into the late game, start fighting in their own terms. Mikma is going to have to provide the poke together with Champion first. And then you're going to have to rely on Riddle brute forcing their way into you. But they don't have the traditional brute force. They have a Twisted Fate and a Gnar that usually want to flank you. So for Godsent, it's going to be that much harder for them to play these team fights because they're going to have to make sure that they constantly have vision behind them and that they have constantly cleared any vision that Riddle has behind them so they can't get these flanks. It's going to be very important. Both Aphelios and Zoe extremely immobile. The only silver lining that I see here, if they get flanked, is that Seaboy might be able to push away any threat that runs into them. But there's way too many of them, right? It's going to be Senkux flanking, it's going to be Doxy flanking, and then they're going to have Maxi in their face as well. So you're going to have to pick and choose your target very wisely there.
Yeah, there's a reason that Volibear is first pick or ban-worthy in most games these days. He's just so powerful. His jungle clear is good. His ability to get into ganks really easily is really strong as well. And then, of course, his ability to dive towers helps a lot when you look for those level 3, level 4 dives. Neither jungler decided to do that here. They've traded Scuttle Crabs. They've traded a couple of camps. And for the moment, they've traded sides of the map. Seaboy now on the bottom. And Maxi looking for a repeat gank onto Mikma, knowing that his flash is down, but there's a control ward that spots him out. He will use the Oracle's alteration to clear that one away.
And I'm sort of liking the patience right here for both of these teams. Maxi doesn't necessarily have to force anything. He's going to look for an opening where he knows they could potentially get something out of it from Migma specifically because he's lost his Flash Summoner, but he's not over-forcing. The idea here is just to just keep on getting priority and starving C-Boy out of his jungle, which is what they're doing right here.
Yeah, Maxi was able to secure that. Sleepy Trouble Bubble. Sleepy Trouble Bubble goes like that was yeah, that's a difficult name to say at the best of times, and apparently my tongue has let me down today. But Sleepy Trouble Bubble goes wide. They steal away the big Razor Beak. And you can see that this is one of the problems with Zoe early on. Although she does have good wave clear, it really depends on her getting her first completed item, or at least the forbidden chapter, before she can clear out the back wave of minions. So Migma actually went for the minion dematerializer and is still getting pushed in that lane, allowing Maxi just to get in and steal away a little bit of a camp.
And I want to see here
Gage is going to happen.
Oh.
Rhea, he should be okay. He's going to flash away. The exhaust went down as well, but the follow-up is here. Double Graviton stun there. But here comes Senkux with the Destiny. Has a gold card locked in, and goodbye, Pedersen. The first to fall in this fight between Riddle and Godsent, and Senkux is looking for a little bit more. Doesn't have a huge amount of mana. Will lock the stun. Wendelbo trying to get in a good position for the hook. Is not quite going to land it on C-Boy as the flash comes out from the jungler. Doxy here going in on Champion. Just going to try and put some damage down here. I don't think he can get the kill. Although when he goes back into mini form, he should be able to get some more harassed out.
This is exactly what I wanted to say, because whilst Migma was trying to back with 0 mana, Senkux stopped his teleport back, which meant that he was able to hit level 6 and use the Destiny while Migma could not follow up on the play. That was great stuff by Riddle. They used the numbers advantage that they had onto the map, and they capitalized by getting 1 kill onto their ADC. That Ezreal is very happy right now. Pickaxe already in the bag, has his Seer right there getting upgraded already. And I'm actually surprised they didn't actually go for the Dragon straight up as well. It seems to not be one of the priorities since it is a Cloud Drake as well. They're going to take it, like we said, slow, methodical. Whoever gets in there first can have the Dragon. They're just looking to get to their crucial items.
Yeah, they really are. And that, as you say, it's kind of the ideal back for an Ezreal. Getting the Tear and the Pickaxe only could be enhanced by getting a full Manamune on your first back, really. Already scaling up. We'll be up towards that Manamune pretty soon, and it's going to hit like a truck for the next while. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Senkux went back, got himself a Blasting Wand. We see this quite often on Twisted Fate. You have a relatively good mana resource in the lane just because of your blue cards, so you can regenerate quite a lot, which means you don't need to go for the Catalyst of Aeons first out of the Rod of Ages. Instead, you can get yourself a little bit more damage and then complete the Rod of Ages on your next back or on the back after that. You can see here, he's got himself a Catalyst of Aeons. That's great. A little bit of extra health, a little bit of extra mana, and some damage to boot. So Riddle actually in a really strong position here, about 1,000 gold ahead. It should be pretty comfortable.
I also really like the raw power that the Blasting Wand gives you, because Twisted Fate is not necessarily a champion that you want to go back and build Mercuries against, because you will be usually running the Cleanse versus him for the gold card. So by putting in this extra AP early into the game, he guarantees that on the Destiny, he's going to deal that much more damage. You see here the Doxy champion is really struggling.
Oh, Champion almost dies there. Has to use the flash to get away. Almost eats a bit of rubble as well. But that does mean that Godsent will be able to secure themselves a dragon. I think they just pushed out the bottom lane. Maxi, on the top side of the map is going to get a Rift Herald for this. And this is the trade you often see. First dragon of the game, usually not too impactful. It looks like we're going to have an Ocean or a Mountain Soul this game. If you can get that Rift Herald and then use it to funnel some plates into one of your key carries, you can just put yourself in a really strong position.
Oh, I do agree, but the Godsent bot lane were a little bit late to the play. They were just starting to walk towards the top, so they're like, great, we secured Dragon. Now it's up for us to go up there and get the Rift Herald. But Maxi, yet again, showing his intelligence right here on his pathing, and is already ahead of the play. He's already securing the Rift Herald. I would not be surprised to see all these resources and the gold from Shelly going on to Doxy on the top side. Kama is great, as Hyper mentioned at the desk, at neutralizing a lot of melee champions because he harasses you a lot on the wave when you're trying to farm. Doxy on the Gnar doesn't care about that because he's already arranged. He's the one harassing champion right here. And you can see the CS discrepancy starting to build up as well. So I am expecting Max to just drop Shelly up there and make Doxy a god, basically.
Doxy would be so strong if you can get up towards that. I think he's going to go Black Cleaver here on the Gnar. I have seen some Trinity Force Gnars, but I'm not 100% sold on it yet as a build, especially since you have so much damage in the rest of your team. C-Boy here, though, trying to Shadow Champion, looking to see if this dive is going to happen. He pops the Oracles. Isn't spotted on a ward. Here comes the Blast Cone across. Maxi able to sneak in, but he doesn't know that C-Boy's there right now. And I was a lot more excited for a possible fight than really came to pass, as C-Boy is just shadowing Champion to try and keep himself. But the Destiny's coming in the middle. They want a bit of this fight. You can see from the mid lane that Zoe's coming up as well. And there's the Stormbringer, disables the turret. And goodbye, Champion. He's done for. The True Shot Barrage comes in to add just a little bit more on top of it. Mikma's going to join the fray, but Doxy going in with a Gnar, catches out C-Boy. The Haymaker shield is not enough. Mikma hits the Paddle Star into Doxy, who spams the taunt. And now the Rift Herald should go down as well. Maxi, get yourself behind the minions just to make sure the Sleepy Trouble Bubble can't stop you. Oh, he's already placed it. That's fine. Here comes the Rift Herald. And there is all that gold being funneled onto Doxy and Maxi.
That's exactly what we're expecting to see. And I think Riddle is again ahead of the play. The rotations are really quickly. Every time Destiny's up, they're using it very wisely. They've cashed in twice now that the R button was pressed by Twisted Fate. There's 2 kills going down for the side of Riddle. In this case, it was 2. It wasn't 1, it was 2. And I have to say, I didn't look at the summoners at the start, but Mikma has gone for the pure poke in lane with the Eri, and is not following up on all these TPs with something like a spellbook that you could have a teleport and shuffling it through with the other summoners that you're getting. And so far, it has really cost them on map pressure. Almost 4,000 gold difference, 11 minutes in, is pretty huge. And if you look at the core items, Black Cleaver in the top lane, Dox is going to be destroying Champion, who has gone for some magic resistance as his first item.
Riddle just in such a strong position, as you say, Trouble, and it kind of shows us their development across the course of the split as well. You know, we saw them beat BTXL just a few weeks ago, then they crumbled a little bit. They lost to Godsent, they lost to Ents, and we thought maybe this team wasn't all that it looked like on paper, but now, once again, just showing us how good they can be in the early game and actually making a claim for second spot in this group. You know, Nordavind are sitting at 5-3. They could even challenge for first, but we won't get ahead of ourselves. But Nordavind are only 1 win ahead, and they're 1 game behind. So if Riddle win this, they actually tie up with Nordavind in that group and could be looking at a preferential spot when it comes to playoffs.
Absolutely. They've beat Excel twice as well. Does it come down to them being tied up in the first place? I feel like Riddle will have the upper hand, and they are making a statement right here. They're playing very clean, very macro-oriented. They're roaming the map like gods right now. Senkax is so on point with his ultimates, and they don't take unnecessary risks, as we've seen a lot of top teams do in this tournament. So I'm really happy to see the new iteration of Riddle.
It's looking so good, and I want to come back to something you talked about a little bit earlier in regards to team fights. You said Godsent needs to have really good vision in the side, in their flanks, and you can actually see that's actually just as important now, right? Because look at how many control wards and how many wards Riddle have in the river, right? All of Godsent's vision is placed behind the line of scrimmage, behind the line of the river in a defensive manner, and this just really allows Riddle to roam around. You can see Doxy comes in from the top lane. Mikma had no idea he was there. He had no knowledge that was happening. C-Boy here is going to get chased out of the river as well. You have no control over the dragon. You got to teleport Karma down towards the bottom of this. Maybe Wendelbo has been just a little bit caught out. Here comes the Destiny. Hoy's going to get knocked out with the depth charge. There's the stopwatch for Wendelbo. Mikma has a good flank position here as well. Zangs's going to Destiny off towards the top side of this fight, but Mikma's just going to go down straight away. Stormbringer in from the volley bear as they look for more fights. Ray just so safe to free farm these kills. C-Boy has to flash away. Pedersen goes golden, but he's only going to get the silver medal this game. He's dead. A great fight for Riddle, and they'll take their first dragon of the game.
There were some hopes for Godsent there, because all this fight was happening while Raya was still down in the bot lane and wasn't able to put in any Qs or any damage. But against Senkax with such a clutch ultimate, they're able to get 4 kills, I think, from this one. And they dragon. So this was absolutely beautiful. I know that Godsent initiated it. C-Boy initiates because he has to. He sees Wendelbo and he sees a chance to turn this around. They pull also the TP down from Champ, and they're like, right, this is the time to fight. Raya is not even there. Wendelbo is down really early. But again, the flank from Senkax is so beautiful. He literally TPs with his ultimate from the middle of the fight. in a flank position, completely destroys Migma, and from there and on, the fight is pretty much done.
And look at how strong Senkux is now. He's got his Rod of Ages stacking up, 3 stacks on it already. That will be finished around the 22-minute mark. A Lichbane complete, a 9-stack Dark Seal, and Champion's going to get chased out by Doxy. The Black Cleaver complete. Champion really has nowhere to go. This Nars looking for the Mega underneath the tower. Doxy decides he doesn't want to go too far right now, so he backs away, but still just dominant in the lane. And Godsent, they need to find a way to get into some picks or some fights, because right now they're being run all over the map. Look at those gold discrepancies. 2,000 in the mid lane, 1,800 in the top lane, even 600 in the jungle. Only the AD carries are similar, and that doesn't really mean too much when a TF is destinying onto your Aphelios. When a Volibear is jumping in, when a Gnar is jumping in, the Aphelios can only do so much.
And here's the problem, right? The more that Riddle is going to be pressuring down on these turrets, the more Migma and Hoist will have problems trying to funnel that gold into themselves by getting these minions. I think the only way Godsent win a fight right here is by a really sick Sleepy Trouble Bubble by Migma. If that doesn't hit, I don't see a scenario where Godsent want to go in and fight. This is sort of like the Epic Kog'Maw mid, right? He has to lay down the poke first, and then you engage. So you saw how south it went when Seaboy just chooses to engage a fight. And even though, sure, they have a couple of items, the setup is just not there. It's just so much harder to execute than Riddle. Riddle can just run at you and they'll still win.
And not having a frontline disengage is a little bit of a struggle here for Godsent. Everyone that's disengaging, well, you kind of got Solar Flare. Maybe a Graviton Moonlight Vigil could work for you, but Riddle going to put down the Rift Herald here in the mid lane. Seaboy's going to get chased out by Maxi, who has a level advantage, and this Rift Herald should just take the tower. Not really too much Godsent can do. And there comes the headbutt, and there goes the turret. Godsent still forced back. Looks like this Rift Herald might even get a second charge, unless Riddle decide to leave it to Ashes. Pedersen will pick it up with the help of Hoist. And now Riddle are moving across to try and get the final tier 1 turret. They're doing this by the numbers. As Stormbringer comes out. This is a little bit greedy, but they are going to catch Migma underneath the tower, and I will eat my words. Riddle get the first kill of the fight. Senkux going in with the gold card. Doxy looking for a flank position here. Could leap in, but doesn't have that Mega Gnar stacked up. Seaboy with the showstopper will bring one back. It's Maxi. The Solar Flare hits, but Senkux has a cleanse off his unsealed spellbook, and that spells the end for Champion. Champion at the bit for a fight, perhaps, but once again, they are the ones that lose it.
And that is so tough, because I said, if the tier 1 towers go down, then you can't push forward to try and farm. Migma was in between his tier 1 and his tier 2, hugging his tier 2 outer tower, and yet he still gets caught out. He still gets chased down and killed. And then they cast in on yet another one. It is extremely hard for Godsent to play the map right now. The second any objective goes down, Riddle moves that much further into Seaboy's jungle. You can see their vision on the top right quadrant of Seaboy's jungle. It is so extremely blue favored.
Top right, yep. That's the one. The observers have actually been really kind to us across the last couple of days, so I will give them some credit. I've enjoyed watching the vision toggles as we come into fights. It's been really cool. So good job, guys.
Ooh, medic.
Yes.
I think Senkux has opened the book of instructions.
Yes, he's got his death note ready.
Yeah.
10 names in it so far. I mean, I can't blame him. 404 enemies not found. You know, like he's in such a strong position right now. There's a dragon up in 30 seconds for them if they want. And I think what we're going to see is Godsent will just try and play on the defensive for the next probably 5 to 10 minutes, depending on what items they're looking for. And when they get their second item, when they get up towards 3 items, they'll then look for the next fight. It's probably going to be around the 5th dragon of the game, because that's when Riddle will be looking for Soul Point. And we'll see if Godsent can then find a fight that favors them, because Riddle are just shutting them away from so much of the map right now. Paddlestar's going to hit on Senkux, but he's still half HP after it. That's not a Zoe, and it's more like a tickle.
So we're looking at the 21st to 22nd minute, where I'm expecting Riddle are going to be pushing for Soul. And they have basically 12 minutes for the side of Godsent to farm their hearts out and try to get as many useful items as possible into their inventories. I'm expecting Champion to have completed his Ardent Sensor, and it's going to be all for one, and that one is gonna be Hoyes. Keep Hoyes alive, give him the room that he needs, make sure he doesn't get flanked, and try to keep beefy big enemies such as Maxi and Doxy away from him. If they can manage that, I do feel like the 200 years possibility is there for the FL.
But they can't even defend under their towers. Stormbringer across the wall. Raya is like, hey guys, thanks for the kill. I'll take that one. Spots the true shot barrage in such a good position. It's going to be Trinity Force Ezreal here as well, so just looking for more damage, not really worried about getting run down at all. And this, I mean, this is what you can do with this sort of composition, right? Like you have the Stormbringer coming out from the volley bear. He disables the tower. It's a really easy dive, and Mikma straight into the face of Doxy. Senkux with the gold card will go unstoppable. 5-0-5 now on the Twisted Fate. And this doesn't look like two teams that are vying for playoff positions. This looks like a one-sided demolition from Riddle.
This looks like Baron. If Riddle wants right now, they can honestly turn their attention straight down to Baron. They will go back, they will grab their pink wards, and they will start setting up. At this point, I don't even know if they're thinking about the soul at all, because they're that far ahead. 10,000 gold in the lead. They don't actually need to do anything. All they have to do is force Godsent into an unfavorable fight, and then throw money back at them with all these extra items that they have. You can see that Senkux cannot compare to Mikma right now. He's got 2 items completed, a Magi's and a Nidus Lad's Rod, to what I'm thinking is gonna be a death cap in just a bit. And Mikma is just stuck on a Luden's Echo. This Zoe that's meant to destroy you, this Zoe that I've added into my illegal list, Mikma has snatched it right out, because that doesn't look like a dominant mid laner.
I mean, it's been a dominant performance from Riddle. I think we have to give them the credit here. They've just constantly caught out Godsent, constantly found fights they were looking for. And now with a frozen mallet on Doxy as well, his side lane pressure is just unstoppable, right? If he ever lands a single auto attack onto Champion, that karma is going nowhere. And I actually quite like the build, because Riddle know that they can win team fights, right? Having more pressure in a side lane just allows them to pull Godsent around the map just that little bit more. A 10,000 gold lead for Riddle right now. They're trying to set up their vision control around this Baron. I was going to say, when you mentioned the Baron, the only weakness for Riddle is if they don't go through the proper steps, right? Because against the Zoe, against a Solar Flare from the Leona, against an Aphelios, if you're caught in a small confined area, you can be caught out. Like, you can take a huge amount of damage in a very short amount of time. But Riddle are going through the steps. They're doing this by the numbers. And they're making sure... Yeah,
who's going to get impatient first? Who's going to make the step?
Don't go into the bush, C-Boy.
Dun, dun, dun,
Oh, here he goes.
Aqua's
there, but they go for the hook instead on Pedersen. And Pedersen sacrificed himself for the greater good. Destiny coming in once again. Mikma not realizing he is unsafe underneath his tower. Depth charge going to be used onto C-Boy. Mikma almost hooked, but he jumps back with the portal jump. C-Boy tries the showstopper in. Wendelbo almost goes down to the Moonlight Vigil. Hoy's jumping forward there. I think he flashed in and was immediately taken down. May have been Doxy's ultimate, but I'd like to see a replay of that one.
So basically, Riddle are flexing their gold right now. They were waiting in the jungle and they're like, sure, you need to check at some point if we're doing Baron, and they actually had to sacrifice Pedersen right there. It would even be C-Boy or Pedersen, the 2 most tanky members, but because C-Boy is holding the smite.
Okay, he's not. I'm so traumatized. I was way too excited when all they had to do was jump the wall and kill
I was like, C-Boy's holding the smite, so there's no way he's going to be the one face checking. And then you were like, wait, but Mikma's holding one as well.
Yep.
Well, he wasn't allowed anywhere near the pit. So here we were playing the game of patience, who was going to step in first, and it was unfortunately Pedersen. He had to be the sacrificial lamb right here for the greater good. Now, the greater good didn't look that good because they didn't end up getting anything from that. I'm just looking at Hoyes, and he's 200 years in them here. And then, he gets now ulted in, and then he flashes further in.
Well, I think he was just trying to get Ray at the end, right? He's like, well, I'm in here anyway. I can't really flash away from the Narg.
Get out.
Blocking. Possibly.
Yeah.
I think it would have been a difficult road for him through a Gnar and through a Volley Bear, but you never know. Aphelios has done stranger things in the past. Right now, he has to do something truly miraculous. They are 13,000 gold behind, 14 kills to 1 down, and Riddle are trying to stink their waves there. You can see Senkux trying to get this bot wave pushing in. The only issue for Riddle is they don't have top wave really in the right position yet, so this cannon wave on the turret is going to die a little bit too early, and then bot wave is going to come in a little bit too late, and Godsent are looking for an engage in the mid lane as Wendelbo's caught out. The showstopper comes out, but there's the Gargoyle Stoneplate, and all 5 players from Godsent collaborate together like a group project at school to take down the Nautilus. However, their inhibitor tower goes down in the bottom lane. Their inhibitor tower is being pressured in the top lane. The inhib's now down in bot. Mid lane's almost dead. Was it worth it? Was it worth it, Godsent?
Oh,
You got to support.
Hoyes was feeling it there for a second. He's like, I got Raya in my sights. I can do it, but this is a triple threat lane right here. Senkax is not going anywhere other than that bot lane. Then you have more Riddle members in the mid and top. What are you going to do? What can you do?
Senkax with the Lich Bane just absolutely demolishes those towers. Godsent lose their second inhibitor of the game. Here's the third, taken down, and Riddle, well, I thought they were going to reset there for a second, but instead they realized they can just close this one out in a 4v5. Doxy misses the Gnar, though, as the Mikra flashes away. Hoyes takes a little bit of a chunk of damage. Senkax locks in a blue to try and take this tower, but oh my god! Oh, Hoyes, you poor innocent child. Almost dies, just about survives, but the Nexus towers will not have that luxury. Pedersen stunned up as he goes in. Doxy almost caught out. The Solar Flare doesn't really connect, and the Stormbringer comes out from Maxi to help Rhea go godlike. Second Nexus tower falls, and Riddle make a statement in Group A as they absolutely demolish Godsent.
They're making a statement here, right? They're back to stay. They demolished PTXL. Godsent had beat them in the past. They get revenge on them. To me, this is a Riddle that looks like the top 4 that we discussed at the start of the tournament. This was the one we discussed. We thought they could win it all. They could go up against Fnatic. They could go up against Excel. They've proven the latter. Now all we need to see them against is Fnatic, and with their way through this game, it looks like a really good playoffs team that could potentially challenge Fnatic. As for Godsent, I think they have the right idea when they go into the drafts, but there's like 2 sides to it. One is, okay, what is our complete image as a composition, and what can we do in lanes? And I feel like once they figure one part out, they forget about the other. And sure, they were playing all for Hoyes, but when everything collapsed around him, I don't think he will be the one to pull the rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a tricky one for Godsent all around. They kind of just got taken apart by Riddle. It makes the Riddle versus Nordovin match on day 1 next week even more excited. Could be playing for second place in that group. We're going to go to a short break before we get back with the second game of the day. Don't you go anywhere.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the NLC. And looks like Riddle really are starting to bounce back. They are looking very, very strong right now. What we expected, everybody predicted them, but overall, that was a very, very one-sided affair coming out from Riddle in that game.
And honestly, it's everything we've wanted from Riddle. Just like Excandrel explained in the pregame, we had to set expectations to Riddle, and I actually believe that they met these expectations today. I was extremely fond of how they finally played against, for their solo laners. As Orcs mentioned in the pregame too, you have as two specific set of strong solo laners at the side of Riddle. Play through their pressure, let them facilitate Maxi, and I thought they did that so well today.
And I think that's something they should continue to work on as their style into playoffs. You know, we've seen Fnatic and XL have issues with their solo laners for the most part compared to compared to their bot lane. And I think it's definitely an avenue that can be punished. I think Doxy and Senkux had a great game there. And I think if you continue to play around them, they will flourish. And this is really the Riddle that we expected. Finally saw come into fruition, but they still need to keep this momentum up, keep the consistency up.
Yeah, I actually really like the fact that we get to see Riddle playing through top side of the map as well, because it's something that isn't really played in this current meta. You're very bot-centric for the most part. Very few teams have the ability or even kind of like the know-how to play through the top lane. Yeah, the inclination to play through the top lane. And I think that, you know, Doxy has kind of proven himself with his champion picks, his champion pool, as well as, you know, what he can achieve in a solo lane to be worth playing through. It's one of the reasons they did so well against XL. He absolutely popped off on that Renekton. And I think, you know, going into the likes of XL and Fnatic later on, I do think top lane is the weakest part of their comps. You know, I think, you know, realistically, Sendo and Pride should be a target for Doxy, and I'm really, really excited to see Riddle actually get to this point, because this is what we wanted for them from the very start of the season. But, you know, better late than never.
Yep, they did hit the mark, and you know it was a good showing from them. It looked very, very clean coming out from Riddle. Now, Orcs, you actually did pick out a game from that play from that game that you really enjoyed. So we'll let Orcs run down our play of the game.
Yeah, so the thing I want to highlight here is just what Senkux manages to pull off, because initially this fight isn't actually great for the start of Riddle. Wendelbull gets caught, and they actually manage to get a fair amount of damage onto him initially, and it's a pretty clean pick. There's not too much done in return, and it's actually Senkux finding Mikma there at the side. He comes in from the flank, and then Senkux ults behind him on the Twisted Fate and essentially eliminates that threat, where it could have been a really bad situation for the side of Riddle if they hadn't stopped the Zoe from coming in, threatening their retreat as they backed away towards mid lane.
Yeah, it was...
Sorry. Yeah, honestly, I just think that Senkux stepped up hugely on this Twisted Faith too. I think this is exactly what they needed specifically for this draft too, with the Volibear from Maxi too. Because a Twisted Faith is great and all and roaming in its own right, but when you have a Volibear you can pair it up with, you want to set up dives, well, that's the Slappy Bear ultimate down, the tower doesn't work no more. It's just the easiest dive of your life, and Riddle just demonstrated that perfectly today.
I think there were multiple plays in that game where you probably could have picked it as the play of the match, because there were a lot of just well-coordinated and clean dives, team fights executed perfectly by Riddle. But we actually do have the jungler standing by for an interview. So Maxi, hello, how you doing, mate, after that win? You feeling good?
Yeah, feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
We played pretty clean, I think, so.
I would argue you played very clean in that game. And I kind of want to bounce off that, because it was a bit of a rough start to the split, but you guys have been getting progressively more and more impressive to watch. A lot clean. What's been going on behind the scenes for you guys to kind of step up to the plate in the last few weeks?
So I think 2 weeks ago we started identifying our issues, and now we're working really, really good as a team, whereas before we were just good individual players, but we're not on the same page at all.
Yeah. Of Doxy tweeting out Riddle Reborn last week after your win. Has it been a bit of a mentality shift? Is everybody really starting to kind of believe in this roster you've put together? What's going on? What's the mood like right now for you guys?
The mood is really good. The scrims are going really well, and we're showing it on stage now, or like in official matches. We showed it was XL too, but it was offline, so you didn't get to watch that. But the mood is really good, yeah.
That's good. That's good. I mean, we missed the XL game, and you are the only team to have beaten XL throughout the entire split. You got 2 wins versus them. What is it about you guys that just seems to have their number? Why are you XL's kryptonite?
I'm not really sure. I don't think XL has played that well against other teams even. Like, I think they're not that good right now, but yeah, we're just winning against them for some reason. Really easily.
That's interesting. So obviously there's a lot up in the air with Group A at the moment. There's quite a few teams all contesting for the spots. You guys are playing versus Nordavind next week. Have you guys started to prepare for that? What's your confidence going into your game versus Nordavind?
I'm super confident versus Nordavind. I think we should have won the game we played against them. We played really poorly, and I'm super excited to show that we're fucking good, or that we're really good, and we can beat them.
Get some revenge. Well, thank you very much for joining us here, Maxi, in the interview, and congratulations on your win. Obviously, congratulations on your win last week, which unfortunately we did miss, but thank you for joining us. It's interesting, actually, to hear the confidence coming out from Maxi there, where he doesn't think XL are all that.
Yeah, I mean, understandably, if you beat XL 2 times in a row, and when you're struggling yourselves as a team, you might be a bit like, what's the problem? What's the issue? I think ultimately that one of the issues we've seen with XL is that top side of the map. And I think typically we've seen Riddle have success when playing against those. The match against XL that was off stream, it was actually essentially Doxy crushed Sendo with a bit of help coming out from Maxi, and I think the map just fell apart from there because they were trying to sort of get Taxa in to help them out, help stop the bleeding, and it meant that they weren't able to play around their win conditions in the bot lane. So I think stylistically they have an advantage in that regard, and I think that now with sort of Riddle ramping up to the point where they're going to be a really formidable team, XL might struggle against them.
Honestly, I just think that ultimately in this league, at least in this group, we don't have a team like Fnatic. There is no one where we look at them and just say, yeah, they are undoubtedly the best team right now. Every one of these teams has seemed to be struggling. Even Nordavind, BTXL, we talked about this kind of scrimmage style on stage. And then, of course, Riddle, who had no consistency whatsoever, where we were just like, how are you losing these games? Why are you making these mistakes? And I think that can be said about a lot of teams in this group. And finally, towards this playoff run now, I think we're starting to see BTXL and Riddle shaping up for that playoff form.
I think actually Gulbog hit a really important point there. There isn't really a team in Group A like Fnatic. There may not even be a team in our league like Fnatic, and I think that speaks volumes. Really, I think it says it all.
Yeah, well, we actually are moving over to Fnatic's group for our second game of the day. It's going to be M&M versus Tricked. Tricked hot on the heels in second spot, but not being able to beat out Fnatic. But we'll be back after a break with M&M versus Tricked.